I'm Randy Credico, live on the fly here on WBAI. Also, part of our Assange series resumes today. The election's over in the US, and presumably the next president will be Joe Biden, but who knows at this point what's going to happen. I've been reading some not text, but Twitter tweets from afar from John Pilger. Now, a lot of people are excited in this country about the change in government. And I understand because I think it's more of a reaction to the domestic situation. But let's talk about the foreign situation here, our foreign policy, and someone that Julian Assange, the situation for Julian Assange, and what this new administration implies for Assange's future. And of course, John Pilger. John Pilger has been sending out tweets. I think that John, first of all, John, thank you. The greatest journalist in my lifetime, John Pilger. Thank you for joining us again, John.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Randy.
I must say, I'm looking at this one tweet, John. It says, exit bad Trump, hello good guy Joe. And you say Biden's record is clear. He is the same warmonger as his predecessors. And then when it comes to Assange, he says that Assange is a high-tech terrorist. So first of all, your reaction to Biden's win, and then where do you find him in terms of foreign policy and his future policy there?
You know, Randy, I reported 4 US presidential campaigns. I found them, the first couple, I found fun. It was like reporting some wonderful circus. I'm now exhausted. It's like a tsunami every 4 years. Those of us outside the United States, we don't even have a mail-in vote, so we can't influence the thing. But so my reaction is, I'm just glad it's over, or appears to be over. But there's only one result, and that is we've all got another US president. Yep. That's all we need to say. Doesn't matter what the name is. Apparently his name is Joe.
Good guy Joe.
That's a friendly name.
Good guy Joe.
It was Donald. That was a friendly name.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, seriously, Biden's record is unsurprisingly the record of a man who is the embodiment of the system. That was the difference between him and Trump for me. Trump was a caricature of the system. Biden was the embodiment of the system. Trump was more interesting in a sense because he was so grotesque. But Biden is straight out of that Democratic heartland, the new heartland. I don't think it, for ordinary people, for ordinary Americans whose lives have been so regressed by the political system that these two represent, I don't know whether it means something domestically. Undoubtedly, there'll be changes. There could be a national campaign to do something about the incredible situation of COVID in the United States, a vaccination program eventually, perhaps, all the things that Trump appeared to resist. But in terms of foreign policy, and that's the point, mate, I don't think it makes any difference. In truth, um, fewer wars, if you like, were started during the Trump period. But then at the same time, his impositions on Iran, his sanctions against Venezuela, all these were quite hideous. But in terms of wars, I mean, Obama is he's the champion. 7 wars. Now, he's a nice guy, or is meant to be a nice guy. I don't know. So, but we end up with the US president. That's my reaction. And I'm, you cross your fingers then. I've got to this stage in life and have not been blown to bits by a US president dropping something from the sky on me. That is almost a miracle.
I think it is, John. The fact that you are still around, that there hasn't been some kind of attempt to eliminate you.
Not on me personally.
I'm thinking, looking at your films, John, from Vietnam to Nicaragua, the Mexicans, all the way up to the coming war on China, the war on democracy, all of these films that have been so critical of the U.S. and NATO foreign policy, Australian domestic policy. I'm surprised that you have survived 6 decades as a journalist, 5.5 decades, or whatever the amount.
Yeah.
But, it really is surprising that you have, getting back to this election, my dear friend, the late Barry Crimmins, who I went to see way back in October of 2016, just prior to the election, not to see Julian Assange. I went to London to see Barry Crimmins, my old friend, and a great political, may rest in peace, political satirist. And Julian gave him a nice homage in a tweet after he died. And Barry said, he says, we have an election coming up in the US in a couple of weeks. And the biggest problem is somebody is going to win.
We've got it in one.
Well,
I agree with that 100%.
Now look, I want to get to the coming war on China. I think that is something that is, over the past 4 years, Trump has been really bad. He hasn't started any wars, but you say Venezuela, there's been Cuba that he's been kind of bellicose with, Nicaragua, and of course Iran, and bad with the Palestinians. But also, I mean, it hasn't started any new wars, but China, the coming war on China, when I first had you on 2016, that movie came out, The Coming War on China, and actually at the end of the year. And so things have not changed. He has been saber rattling with China, and I expect Biden to do the same. What is your assessment?
I think they'll all do something like that. I mean, 2016, you're right. It came out just after he was elected. The whole China policy, the new China policy, in fact, was the brainchild, so-called, of Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State in Obama's administration. And in 2011, Obama really blew the whistle, on the whole China campaign when he flew out to Australia and announced what became known as the Pivot to Asia. And the Pivot to Asia was the greatest buildup of US warships in the Asia Pacific since World War II. And as a result, we've now got something like 400 US bases encircling China, from Australia right through the Pacific up to Korea, Japan, and across Eurasia. We have constantly US ships probing inside the territorial waters of China, US drones probing, provocations day after day. That all happened, started to happen 2011. What Trump picked it up and has really added just, I would say, a kind of abuse to it. It's constantly abuse. It just keeps abusing China. Actually, his trade war against China hasn't had that much of a profound effect, not yet. What Biden will do, I don't know. Biden is a Cold Warrior. He will have the standard Democratic Party's policy attitude to both China and Russia. But China is a special case, Randy, I suppose, because in less than a generation, China has risen to, in some respects, not all, in some respects, to be the world's biggest economic power. And it threatens US dominance. Now, if you look back to the last 10 years, whoever was in power, George W. Bush, Obama and Trump in the last 10 years, both of them have made it clear that that is intolerable. There can only be one bully on the block, one big guy, and that's the US. The fact that we have what they call a bipolar world or a multipolar world now. It's no longer a bipolar world, it's a multipolar world. That's a reality that the US is resisting.
It did not come up as an issue, China or our foreign policy,
No.
not at all, other than to rough up Joe Biden as being a socialist. I mean, to try to make him like he was Chavez or Fidel Castro, which he's couldn't be any further away from those guys' local life. I wish he were, like that. But that word has been pretty much dirtied up, the word socialism. And I think that the entire year, no talk about foreign policy, China, there was talk about the trade and all of that. Do you think that Trump was even has been aware of the bellicosity of the US and the amount of, which you point out in the coming war in China, the 400 bases, lily pad bases or whatever that surround China? Do you think he was even aware of that?
I'm not sure. I mean, at one point early in his presidency, he actually referred to the bases that are all over the world, and there's something up to 1,000 US bases, known and unknown bases all around the world. He referred to them and said, why do we need them? I mean, that was a point where he was also questioning why do we need to keep persecuting the Palestinians? So Trump was able, of course, to do a complete backflip and do a 360 degrees on both those issues. He gave the Pentagon the greatest military budget it's ever had, and he gave the Israelis what they wanted for a very long time, and that is moving the US embassy to Jerusalem, and in effect, as far as the US is concerned, not as far as international law is concerned, he legitimized the settlements on the West Bank. So Trump's multiple contradictions all began at the beginning, and by the end, he'd become yet another US president. He did what you expect a very right-wing, I suppose, very alt-lunar right-wing Republican president to do.
He campaigned basically as an isolationist, but getting back to you're right about Israel moving the embassy to Jerusalem, and I don't know what prompted him to do that. Is he really pro-Israel? Did he think something was going to be some kind of political quid pro quo there? But what's been lost here is the conditions of those that live in Gaza and the West Bank. And you had a posting the other day, Robert Fisk, whose book whose book I have, and it's about this thick, and probably one of the most brilliant scholars on the history of the turmoil there and religion, the religious schisms and everything. I want to ask you about this posting of your film. This is the Palestine is still the issue. You posted that the other day, that it's right there's a link to it at Twitter, and it's on your website. You dedicated it to the life of Robert Fisk. Were you friendly with Robert Fisk?
I don't think we were particular friends, no, but I admired him and I knew him. I presented him with the Martha Gellhorn Award for journalism, a prestigious award that I felt, as one of the judges, he richly deserved. Robert Fisk was, first of all, an old-fashioned reporter, but not a reporter who was beholden to the institution for which he worked or to Western foreign policy, British foreign policy. He was an independent. He worked for the independent newspaper, but he himself was a true maverick, which the best journalists always are. And he used to get very angry about embedded journalism, or what he called hotel journalism. Journalism where the pack would arrive at a place of upheaval or war or whatever, and form a consensus about what the story is going to be. Fisk always went against that grain. That's what a real reporter should be doing. And for that reason, he had the most, how shall I put it, disgraceful obituary in The Guardian, where a sneering at his independence, and in other newspapers. But those who knew and know the Middle East and care for, I suppose, whether people have a right to human rights, as the Palestinians do, who care for the rights of ordinary Syrians, who don't regard the whole Syria tragedy as some kind of cult that if you take a differing view on it, then somehow you become the object of the cult's anger. I mean, one of Robert Fisk's last stories was to go to Douma in Syria and interview a doctor who had worked in, or had worked in the place that had been allegedly bombed with a chemical weapon by the Syrians. There was no chemical weapon. And the whistleblowers that have come out, official whistleblowers that have emerged in the last few years, have shown that to be the case. And Fisk reported this doctor as simply straight, as a good reporter. He received just a wave of insults because he was stepping outside of the way Syria should be reported. He was reporting the truth as he saw it. So I admired Bob Fisk. I thought he was an unusual, interesting man. We first met long time ago, and we both received awards in the British Press Awards. He got his for reporting from Northern Ireland. And later on, he actually completed, he was living near Dublin when he died, in Ireland, he took the nationality of, I think, his father, or he shares Irish and British, shared Irish and British nationality, and got his PhD for writing about Irish neutrality during the Second World War. He was a thoroughly interesting man and a fine reporter.
Really a great writer and a great reporter. As you said, he was not an embedded reporter, not a hotel reporter, war correspondent. And the same with you, John. I mean, you know, you've been to Vietnam, you've been to Cambodia, you've been to all of these countries around Nicaragua during the conflict. In '84, you were there, and so you were certainly not embedded. Is there something about what drives you, John, to do that, to go to these places, because you really are putting your safety and your life in danger? What is it about it? Do you get is there a rush that comes with it?
Oh, look, Randy, I've always felt privileged to be a journalist. You know, I started very young as a journalist, and I couldn't believe my luck. Here I was being given a sort of license to be allowed into people's lives, to write about them, to find out about things, to inquire about things, to satisfy my own curiosity, to go to countries and see cultures that I hadn't imagined even existed. So I take a rather more positive view. And yes, there have been dangers all the way through it, but I think what has driven me on is that I've always had a passion for being a journalist in all its forms, making documentary films. I was trained and worked for many years as a newspaper journalist. Yes, there's, as you put it, there's a rush in a lot of that. But it is the rush. The rush is at its best when you know you've got something that is going to make sense of a situation that people are rather confused about, or about which they've been denied information. That's where the real rush is. In other words, you've got the real story, or you've got as close to the real story that it's possible to get.
It takes a lot. It takes a lot of guts to do that, John. And I admire all of your work. I got to tell you, Nicaragua is one of my favorite of your films. And you can see all of John's films now on johnpilger.com. All of his films, all 61. And plus, there are some speeches that have been added there. If you go to the videos, 6 or 7 or 8 speeches and interviews with Martha Gellhorn and others that you did on this program back, I don't know if it's the 70s or 80s, early 80s. So there's a lot of stuff there. John Pilger, this is Randy Credico live on the fly on WBAI 99.5 FM here in New York City. We are talking with the great John Pilger. We are going to take a break and continue this conversation, talk about Julian Assange on the other side and what's in store for him under a Biden administration. We'll be right back. That's it with John Pilger. We have another half of that interview. You can get that interview at the Live on the Fly YouTube channel, or go to Assange Countdown to Freedom, where the second half we talk about Assange, and also the WBAI.org website. Please support the station. It is really critical right now that you support the station. Give to WBAI.org. That's give, the number 2, WBAI.org. We need to keep the station alive. I mean, where else in the country are you going to get guests like John Pilger? It's this station, WBAI. Please support it. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you next week.
Will you please say hello to the folks that I know? Tell them I won't be long. They'll be happy happy to know that as you saw me go, I was singing this song. We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day.